All right, good afternoon here. It's Kelby Ginn, and I'm joined with Drew and Joshua Evans. How you guys doing?
Good. How you doing?
Good. So we're here, like I said, with Mr. Joshua Evans for Meet the Employee episode. He is the Vice President of Operations of Armcorp. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Did I say that right?
That's correct.
All right. Sounds good. Let's just jump into it. You want to just tell us about you?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I know this is cool to see that we're doing this. I think I'm the second. I think.
Yep.
The
Stolly
owner,
was
Tim.
Stolly. Well, I guess you could say Tim did it.
So.
But for Meet the Employee, you're the second one.
Yeah, because Tim's not.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. So, like you said, my name's Josh. I was born in Tennessee and grew up. My dad had always been in construction. Not something that I was at all going to pursue. I went to college for political science and pre-law, so totally different world. And as far as before I get into Armcorp, who I am, things I like to do. I'm very faith-based, faith-oriented. Most important thing in my life is certainly my relationship with Christ. Furthermore, though, is family and people. I think we're here to provide worship in a way through our lives and how we live, and I just happen to so be doing it currently at Armcorp, and I'm very without talking about I don't like talking about myself. I'm gonna have to. It's about me, I guess. But discipline's big for me. I enjoy. I don't enjoy being in the gym, but I enjoy the discipline of it. So that's a big part. I enjoy reading a lot. I'm a bit of a nerd. And I've met a lot of cool people through that and learned a lot. And I don't know, I like to challenge myself, and I fall short a lot, but got a lot of good people here that keep me on that journey.
Yeah. I mean, just what you're saying is spot on because of where you started and now where you're at is insane. Like I tell the story often to people, and especially our younger kid folks, letting them know some of the characteristics you've adopted in life, that if you just adopted those as an individual, it'll carry you far. So yeah, let's just jump into that. What brought you to Armcorp?
Absolutely.
Because we're going to tell the story. I mean, we're going to tell a story how you came here and the interview with my dad. So if you just want to jump into it.
Absolutely. So like I alluded to earlier, definitely had no intention. I went to Tennessee Tech University. I'd graduated, I was between two options. Ironically, the CIA. I'm glad I did not make that decision now. And had an internship there to start as an entry level, or go to George Washington University for law school. And I got married, and God changed my plans completely. So I go back to Tennessee. I'm in a bit of uncertainty what I'm going to do, and so I start looking around. And Edward Jones is hiring financial advisor. Start there, and it's going well, but my heart's not in it. It's not something I'm passionate about, and got about a year and a half in, and I was doing well enough, but I just told my wife, I was like, I don't want to do this. I really didn't enjoy selling, and it just wasn't my heart. If you can make a lot of money doing that, but you've got to have a passion for it. Mm-hmm. So anyways, my aunt lived in the area, and she started working in this company called Armcorp, I thought at the time, and my dad being in construction, she had reached out to him. They were looking for superintendents. It was a fairly new company, startup at the time. It's probably been around 2011 when I started hearing about it.
Yeah.
And my dad actually started working on a job here as a superintendent in Durham, North Carolina. And he went and drove and met this Tim Rosengarten halfway. And they met and they interviewed. And he was coming home occasionally and was just telling me about how great it was. And again, had no intention. It's construction. He had been a carpenter since I was a little boy. So I was really happy for him. And but then, in a weird turn of events, the job I was looking for just wasn't materializing. And so Cheryl is her name. She reached out and was like, "Hey, they're looking for some new superintendents." And I was like, "That's cool. I don't know why you're telling me." I tell this as kind of a it may be embarrassing to some, but for me it was true. Like I didn't even know at the time. I've seen what's called a sawzall, but someone early on said reciprocating saw, and I'm like, didn't know what that was. I mean, I was as green as possible. Like I had never been on a project, and they still want to interview, and I'm like, there's no way. Like I don't know enough. Like it was pretty scary, but there was something. Again, I talked about my faith. There was something that felt right, even though in my mind it made zero sense. And she's like, why don't you just go for an interview? And I was like, again, I wasn't sure, but I felt like I had this prompting, this leading to go. So I do. I set up an interview with Tim, and he's the owner. And I get here, and Tim says he recounts it coming in my white button-up shirt, and he always calls him an insurance salesman, which kind of hurts because I did sell stocks and bonds, but it's whatever. And I come in, and literally, it was an anti-interview. Like, I wasn't here trying to say I'm like, you don't need to hire me. Like, I don't know anything. I would love the opportunity down the road, but I don't think you can just put me on a job. He was like, okay, well, I feel good about you. I'm going to hire you. And I look back, and Tim has his own. I'll let him tell his side of the story. But I was like, man, are they just desperate? Like, because actually, this is how funny things work out. They actually had a superintendent lined up for my position. I've been told after the fact. And this person, I guess, day before he's supposed to start, just backed out. So they were a bit desperate. I mean, it's okay to say that. There's times in life when opportunity arises, you got to take it, you got to seize it. So they literally say, okay, we're going to want you to start in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And man, I'm scared. Like, I don't know anything. I mean, I'm like, I'm going to let these guys down, be a big fraud. And I show up, and it's a $2.3 million historical renovation. And you got these subs talking about things like tuck pointing, and I'm like, I was shaking my head, had no idea what that meant. I mean, I knew nothing. I had a guy there helping me. He no longer works here, but he had a lot of experience. Yeah. And it was awkward. I was sharing a hotel with him, and he was just like, okay, we're going to run the Bobcat today or whatever. And I've never been in equipment. But the funny thing is, without going too much time on the specifics, like, I got through it. There's a lot of hard work. And the thing that helped me through was not, I don't think I'm anything smarter than anybody. I sincerely don't. I don't even say that like a false humility. I generally believe that most people are pretty close to enough to the same intelligence. It comes down to humility, and it comes down to asking questions and just pursuit of excellence. And so, and for me, it was fear of failure. I didn't have this noble cause. I just didn't want to be embarrassed. I mean, I didn't want to be the guy that failed and let my family down and my wife down. So like, I would hear these things these subcontractors would say, and I would nod my head and say, okay, I'll get back to you. And I would go Google it. I would watch YouTube videos, and by the end of my first year at Army Corps, I mean, I literally had probably learned 10,000%. Because I mean, it's not hard to learn more than nothing, because I knew nothing. But I mean, I learned a lot, and I still had a lot to learn. But we finished the project, and which is it okay if I keep on this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Finished the project, and then they sent me to another location, finished that project, and I started getting a little confidence, but I was still nervous. And I think one of the most shocking days for me in a good way. They came to me and said, hey, Army Corps in the office had brought in this some sort of consultant to like help with the culture early on and get some of the front end. It was still a young company lined up. And they said, hey, we just want you to know that of all the superintendents, and I was the least experienced, they voted you the most valuable superintendent. And I sincerely I don't get a big head on those things. But I was like, there's no way. That makes no sense to me. And I still this day don't understand that. And I think it was because what they said was, we just know that you're going to figure it out, that we trust you, and that you're just going to, if we ask you to do something, you're going to do it.
Yes. Yeah, so, I mean, sorry to stop you, but
go ahead. Anytime.
That's what I was kind of going to ask is, what does it take? I mean, I know you know internally, like you knew what it took to get there, and maybe someone out there that doesn't is in the same position that you were, like they felt that they had to go follow financial advising?
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you've picked that path, you feel like you're obligated to stick with it. But if you find out that you don't like it, like you did, you took a shot. Yeah. I mean, you got to learn somewhere. Absolutely. And that's amazing, because we pride ourselves on Army Corps is not really necessarily hiring on experience. Yes, it helps. Yeah. But to follow up on my question, what do you think it takes to get there? Yeah.
And you're right. Like, I will say this. I heard someone break it down. Like, when you fire someone, which is never pleasant, you fire someone, you almost never fire someone based on lack of knowledge or lack of skill, even to a degree. And you might think that would be high, but once you're in that position, you realize that's actually not the case. It's usually the things that you can control. It's attitude. It's showing up on time. It's effort. It's honesty. It's the things that are either you have it because you choose to have it, or you don't have it because you don't think it's important, or you've not learned the hard way yet. And, I would say what it takes is it really does take humility. And people hear that word, and humility and confidence are not antithetical. Like, I'm very confident, but I'm also very humble. And it sounds like I'm going to brag about being humble. Like, if I wasn't so great, that sounds kind of like a oxymoron. But what that does is I don't assume I know more than everyone else. I don't assume that I'm better than that person. Yeah. And you will find yourself like when there's a mistake or a problem, it's not someone else's problem, it's your problem. And I just think that that mindset alone will propel you, just because by nature you're going to be doing the things required to getting there. You're not going to, again, shift the buck and blame others. And for me, like I said, I don't want to act like it's completely all noble. A big fear of mine is a fear of failure. And I didn't want to be embarrassed. And so I would say, especially if you're having that concern about, man, I want to change careers or something, life is short, but it's also long in a way. So if you're fortunate enough to be one of those that get to live into your 70s.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been here at 10 years almost in 4 months. I'll be here for 10 years. The time has flown, and I'm only 34. So like I could literally start over right now, a complete new career in 10 years, be 44, which is still relatively young, and have become maybe not world class, but an expert in another field.
Yeah.
So I think just go for it.
The willing to learn and be adaptable. And we talked about it earlier on the culture episode, but it's just like you literally can be hired off your attitude and fired off your attitude.
Absolutely.
I mean, think about it. 9 times out of 10, you're most likely, like you said, not going to get fired off of your experience.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you can come in not knowing anything.
Yeah.
But if you're willing to learn and adapt, I mean, you can learn a lot. Yeah. I mean, you're a prime example. But the thing is, that attitude, that behavior, hired and fired. I think that's the only, for me, I mean,
I agree.
As if I was a business owner, I would be hiring off of attitude and behavior, because if someone like you walks through the door and is willing to learn, and I feel that, I'm going to hire that 9 times out of 10. Like, I mean, because obviously a lot of people would take a lot of you in their company.
I do appreciate that. And I agree. Like the most unpleasant part of my job is, terminating people. And I can honestly say I'm sitting here trying to think of examples. Not something I dwell on a lot, but I cannot think back of one time where I'm like, hey, I know you're trying your hardest. You're a good person. Yeah. You just can't figure it out. I've not had that. I mean, we've had to maybe shift some people, but that's never been the case. Yeah. From experience, I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
I think it's really all attitude. I mean, like you've been saying, it's like you can be really good at, I mean, I feel like a lot of people can be good at anything if they put 110% into that thing.
I agree.
And you've shown it too. I mean, I think we all have with things we like to do.
Yeah.
Put 110% into it. We become better at what we're trying to do.
Absolutely.
What did we say the other day? You can be the greatest worker, the best worker at what you do in your craft, but if you have a bad attitude, you're a bad employee. We just talked about that the other day. Like, you are a bad employee if you have a bad attitude. I don't care how good you are. I don't care how much you produce. Yeah. There's still that factor there that we have to deal with now.
Yeah. You drain it. And if again, I know I'm not the only reader, people that are listening and these guys in this room with me, but a lot of things are similar. I hate when people compare business to war, because I've read books on war. I've never been in it, fortunately. And it's not pretty. But there are things that are understandably a crossover. But even if you read, one of my favorite things is reading like memoirs of like the most elite groups. And there is one common component, and those teams, they have to be tighter than tight. Yeah. And they cannot even tolerate if you have one mission where you're not focused, or you have a bad attitude, or you're blaming or pointing the finger, they will kick you out of that because their life's on the line. Yeah. Now, again, the stakes are much higher. I understand that. I'm not comparing that regard, but there's a reason that like the U.S. Special Forces is considered one of the greatest organizations in the world in business or in military. But it comes down to that one thing. You have to have each other's back. You have to have a positive attitude, and you have to have a high level of accountability.
Yeah. The stakes were high for small businesses in this last 2 years, with COVID and everything. Yeah. So if you didn't have a good enough team like we did, we probably wouldn't be here.
Oh, we took some
shots.
Exactly.
I mean, it's just like if you have one slight, you hear toxic and cancer and all this stuff, and like that's taking your focus off of what matters, the mission. I mean, that can change. That can completely bury a group or an organization or anything like that. So.
Absolutely. And I would say one more thing on this when we move on. I would say that like even another thing that part of my role is I deal with, I help with some problems pop up. And every industry, we're not unique, faces just these random challenges that just seem to come out of nowhere. Like you prepare and out of nowhere. And we dealt with the whole COVID thing, and a lot of businesses, unfortunately, like you were alluding to, Drew, went out of business completely. And we took some major shots. And that was the one thing that everyone in this group stuck together. Tim put his money where his mouth is. He did not lay any people off during a very hard downturn. And we were rewarded. And we were able to the reason we were able to stay afloat is because of those attitudes. And I will say firsthand that if something comes up that is that is a huge problem, it's stressful, but I can get through it. The most energy zapping thing for me is dealing typically with maybe someone that I trust on my team, an employee or a colleague of some sort, that is pointing the finger and not going about things in an honorable way.
Yeah,
that is the most draining thing for me. That's my least favorite thing to deal with, and it just sucks the energy out of me. So I know if it does it for me, think of what it does as a corporation or an organization as a whole.
Yeah, for sure. So speaking of your role, what is that role? What is Vice President of Operations?
Yeah. So again, being a small business, VP of Operations. So I started as a super. One good thing is I've been able to experience almost every position except I only did estimating in a small form, but started as super, and then went to business development doing proposals, and then went to project manager and then senior project manager. And I never asked for these things. Tim just kept giving me those opportunities. Honestly, there was a few I remember actually Tim and his wife Mary, when she was working here, they said, "Hey, when's your project manager?" And I was like, I don't know how to do that. I didn't even know how to do submittals. I'd been here now. I've been a super, and like, no, we trust you. And again, Tim just always kind of like the kicking the bird out of the nest and just, you better fly. But he kept having that confidence in me. So now it's just kind of a culmination. So I say underneath me, but like my groups is, I have shops, we have safety, we have, operations, we have estimating. Really, the only thing I'm not directly over is finance, but I say directly over. Each one of those group has someone that's in charge. And so for me, it's more of a macro level. Like I help with problems, I help with planning, and I try to make sure everyone's cohesive. It's a full-time job, to say the least. There's many times where I could use 80 hours a week. And I'm learning too, to continue empowering the people that are running their departments. And so that's something I'm trying to prepare. But I would say it's just a culmination of just making sure everything is functional at every level. And I'm giving the resources and tools and training to the people in charge at those levels to make sure they can function at a high level. That's kind of an general.
So do you think working up those ranks has definitely helped to set you up for success to be in this position, especially in the same company? I mean, yeah, we could have an outside guy come out if all of a sudden you leave or something. We need another vice president of operations. You think you had the advantage of working up the ranks within the same company to be in this position?
Absolutely. I say this to a lot of people. Even though I was only in the field here at Army Corps, I think right at 3 years. Actually, it's not a long time to be in the field if you think about it. There's people who've been in the field for 20 years plus, but it was definitely enough to learn and understand and empathize. It's one thing. Sympathize is basically you've not been through. Like I can't sympathize with a woman herself, like losing her pregnancy. My wife and I, we had that. I was a dad, but what she went through, I can't, because I can sympathize, but I can't empathize. I didn't experience it. And so one thing is I'm able to actually experience those things and empathize and learn. I'm a little defensive of my guys and in the field, or eventually we'll have some ladies in the field as well. But my guys in the field, and I've been through what they've been through. And also when you have been at every level, like whether project assistants now, I mean, I didn't have that as a project manager. I would have 16 to 18 jobs and I was working very late. But I had to do submittals, I had to do safety plans, I had to do schedules, I had to go to the meetings. Biggest thing that did for me, it wasn't just a check mark to say I did this. It was the confidence. It gave me an immense amount of confidence going forward, and from that experience. And I think that's one thing I see. Not to be on go on a tangent, but I hear a lot of people these days talk about like you need to like have these positive affirmations and you need to like boost yourself up, and that's good. You don't need to downplay yourself. I totally agree with that. But at the end of the day, the only way to build true confidence is go through some stuff. You have to experience it and overcome something. So yeah, that's the biggest thing it did for me, is it just let me know that I was able to achieve it. And now if there's a problem that breaks, I have an idea on maybe how to fix it.
Yeah,
that's great.
That's good. So what's your favorite, most fulfilling part of your role?
Man, this may sound cliche, but I would say number one is honestly the people. I would think that most people who really respect and care for the people they're working with, or maybe they're responsible for in some way, is the people. And it's fulfilling because I'll be honest, construction itself has never been a passion. And if I'm being totally candid, it's still not a per se passion as far as construction. I think that's also overplayed, but this podcast isn't about all that stuff. But passion is overplayed, but I think that I feel a purpose for what we do for these hospitals is very important. I mean, I've seen many of the veterans. I've been there in person, and you see these veterans going to these appointments. For one, it gives me, I genuinely feel like, hey, we did that. We built this part of the hospital. We repaired this, and lives will be saved. And I do think about that when I start getting, maybe feeling a little cynical about something or frustrated. That's extremely fulfilling to me. And again, it comes down to the people I work with here. For the position I'm in, the thing that would keep me up at night at times is like I've referenced that COVID thing because it's very still fresh. My biggest concern was keeping everyone here who had children, a spouse, keeping them working, and so their lifestyles could continue to be preserved. So that's all very important. So yeah, fulfilling is the client, and I feel like what we do is important, and it makes a difference in the world. I generally do, and the people I work with.
Awesome. So what I have it worded as, what effect does your role have with Armed Corps? But when I'm thinking and hearing you talk, it's, what would you tell someone to sell your job that it's needed? What effect? What's the most important? I guess. Yeah. Why is your job needed? I
would say, again, without boring everyone and getting the day-to-day specifics and the reporting and it's the one-on-one meetings that I have with people when, I've seen literal tears in people's eyes here at Armed Corps from the stress, things they're going through. They don't know how to solve this problem. If they didn't have some sort of support, that they would be, someone to help carry them the burden and figure something out, that they might not be able to do this job. And again, I don't think Armed Corps is unique in that. I think a lot of businesses, you hear of people facing that kind of stress in every industry. But I feel like at the end of the day, right now, that I'm huge. My biggest asset and purpose is helping share that burden and get through the hard problems, because some of these problems are massive. In construction, it's very unforgiving. You have one subcontractor and somehow miss a multi-$100,000 issue, or you have a subcontractor go out of business mid. These are all things that we've faced mid business or mid project, and you got to figure it out. And I have to be able to not panic, and I have to be able to work with that person and get through it. And I'll put a lot of effort into it and a lot of time. And so far we've been very blessed. God's blessed us to keep us, because we've taken some punches. Yeah. But I would say it really comes down to helping solve these big problems and letting people know they're not alone in it.
It's good. What's the most memorable thing up to this point with Armed Corps? It could be anything. That's had a massive effect on you in your life.
That one, I did get to prepare for that question a little bit, and that one was very hard because, like I said, I know people have been at places they've worked for decades. So I'm going on, which is crazy to think, a decade in May 2nd will have been 10 years. And some of the thoughts, some of the memories I have, the low-hanging fruit was I was able to go to San Diego for a week. That was awesome. I was able to go to New Orleans with my wife and for business, which was fun. I was able to go to the muster in Orlando with Tim and had some great experiences. But it actually, the thing that kind of came back to me was there was about a 3-year stretch here where I felt like I had a lot of evolution and growth. It was just Austin Abels and I were the only project managers, and we kind of hit a lot of growth pretty quickly. And we didn't have, again, I referred to it earlier, we didn't have, now we have 2 project assistants. We have a full-time safety and training manager. We have certified payroll manager. We have 4 PMs, 4 estimators. We've grown so much. Yeah. But at that time we had an estimator and 2 PMs. And so I was at one point every Friday, I would be here at times until 3 a.m. And Tim would text me Saturday morning mad, like, what were you doing here so late? He was afraid I was going to burn out. But it's a bit nostalgic now, because I think that's when I grew a lot. There was one point when I got kind of jaded at the very beginning, because I remember thinking, now I'm salary. And this is, just to be clear, Tim never asked me to do any of this stuff. He wanted me to go home. But there was so many things that I did not want to be responsible for failure. And so I would stay late. I would usually throw a sermon on. I would listen to some guys I would listen to at the time, and I would make some coffee. And then my wife, I have 4 boys now at the time, I only had 2. She would bring the boys by, see me. It might be 9:30 on a Friday night. And so they were a part of it. And I would say that went on for almost 3 years. And but it made me appreciate so much what we have. It made me grow a lot, and now I feel that I've been through some things that I don't feel like a hypocrite when I ask someone to put in some effort
Yeah.
or to push themselves, because at least I feel like I've paid my dues on the way, and I still have a lot to do. Like every day's a new day. Like you can't rest on your laurels from years ago. But I would say those long nights on a Friday night, ironically, and I would not change it if I could. If hey, you could have those hours back, because I had my family incorporated into that, and then I had a whole weekend.
Yeah. Is that something that you took upon yourself to feel that you needed to do that, or was that like requirement of the job or duties at that time?
That was it definitely was not required. And again, it was even basically I was encouraged not to do that. Again, Tim cared. He was not like, hey, you better be here doing these hours. He was like, he would literally, I mean, I'm saying this candidly, he would text me a couple times, super.
You were encouraged not to do that again?
Yes. I mean, he was pissed a few times, like, what are you doing here? But it genuinely was, again, I hate failure. And I want to say it was all noble, but it takes one project manager to miss one email, one schedule. You didn't reach out in time. And a whole project, and it's your fault. And I didn't want to be the weak link. And so I took that upon myself, because I think I could have got by and did okay at some areas, but I think, and I did never reach perfection, but I wouldn't have hit the level of excellence that I was pursuing. And it was just because of effort is all it was.
Yeah. That's awesome. So where do you see yourself or Armcorps in the future? What opportunities would you like to see possibly happen?
Yeah, that's a good one. So I won't rehash, but again, I started as super, so I don't really have a vertical place to go. I mean, in our world, if you know about Armcorps, we're a service disabled veteran-owned small business. That's what allows us to bid VA. Tim, I never served. I was in the military, and so there's no CEO or owner for me, which is fine here. But so I've basically went as quote high as you can as far as positions. So for me, it's more now of opportunities of ingraining that mindset into all the employees here and I've got, again, the guys in this room, ingraining that culture, and that level of excellence. I want Armcorps to be able to also reach out, because we do a lot of VA work, but I would love to do work, at other locations, and just kind of expand that and get more experiences. We're still looking at we do a lot of federal, a lot of military bases, things like that. We just got, a contract at the Cleveland Clinic, which is, I'm excited about. Yeah. So for me, I think opportunities at Armcorps is just doing construction, but just finding some other places. Like we've been to the Pentagon. It'd be cool to return to the Pentagon.
Yeah.
Things like that would be pretty excellent.
And you kind of highlighted too, you kind of have your own personal excellence, which I respect of you for that. And that's kind of what we're pushing within the company. I mean, it just makes life easier, because just look at the example. Like, you came in with no experience, and just your personal excellence and your willing to work and be coachable and be adaptable has got you to this point. I mean, I really don't see Josh coming in with zero experience and a bad attitude getting to where you're at right now. No. Yes, it can happen. If right now you're standing here and be like, I'm just always negative or something like that, or someone tells me negative, you can change that. You can grow your habits. Yeah. Eliminate the limiting beliefs and just go. I mean, Absolutely. It's very possible, but I don't see that happening if you came in with a bad attitude. No. I don't even know if you get hired.
No, I would definitely have failed. I mean, I'd rather, I'm one of those people that just will, I don't mince words. And then what I mean is I'm not afraid to like lay it all out. And I remember I told you that early on in that time I was referring to earlier, when I was working the 60, 70 hours, and I was paid what was good for my job. Yeah. But again, some people can abuse it, and I want to be very clear. Tim was telling me to go home, but I one time I did a calculation. Like, I added up all the hours I'd worked and for the month, and I was like, in a 4-week month, I hit like almost 160 hours or something. I mean, I'm sorry, like it was like 220 to 240 hours, something stupid. And I didn't do that for super long, again, a couple years. And I did my hourly rate, and it was rough, because I was salary. And I remember, actually, this is kind of a testimony, because I remember the Lord, God told me, don't do that calculation again. Trust me, give to me what is mine. And that's what I felt. I heard my spirit. And if you're going to fail, because what that was doing, that was like breeding cynicism and frustration. Again, no one told me to be there. It was me. So if I'm going to be there, I can't be like, well, I'm the hardest working guy here. That's arrogance. That's ridiculous. That's not humility. That's that core trait that's required. So I had to go back to, being a servant, to serve. And if I hadn't done that, I never would have had the opportunity to grow. And, my salary has raised definitely many times over since when I first got here. I started making like 19 an hour, which was pretty good for a lot of people. And I don't care that was years ago. And I've been able to grow and grow Arm Corps. And now I've seen all the superintendents in the field, the rates have grown and grown and grown because of our success. So I would not even came close. I would have had that, what you referred to earlier. I know Kelby talks about it a lot, the limiting belief. I would have had one of those unknowingly, and I would have never grown. So it sounds so kumbaya, and I almost get tired of like the self-help books, and you can read too much of that, and you don't you still have to do, but it really comes down to, man, just your perspective.
Exactly. I mean, that we talk about all the time. It's the moment you wake up in the morning, it's you. Yeah. It's you versus you. It doesn't matter. Like, I hear people when I've started on this voyage and stuff of just realizing it's me.
Yeah.
Like, that sounds selfish, but you putting God first is putting God first.
Yeah.
I mean, that's putting yourself first because it's huge. And I know you're a huge man of faith and but it comes down to you.
You're right.
I had a question quick. You're what, mid-30s?
Yeah, 34.
Young. So it takes a lot of men and women to, adapt your mentality and your work ethic. It probably takes them 50 some years.
Yeah.
So was there a role model or like someone you followed in the beginning, like especially since you're so young? Like how are you so like?
Yeah.
Sorry,
what?
He just comes in with that hitter, that home run hit question. He sits there and listens the whole time, every episode. I just was telling him about this, and he comes in with this great question. Sorry.
No,
I just always wanted to ask you because like it just blows my mind. Like I'm younger than you, but like we're 10 years apart. But like still, I'm like
it's a long time.
I feel like that's so much for me to like get to your point,
to
your level. But like, is there like someone that like just you snapped one day where like I need to go 100?
He wants to hear the secret sauce.
Yeah, I want your ingredients.
It's a secret sauce. No, it's actually I kind of remember when I started feeling a bit of a change and I'm not gonna go through my whole like this is a memoir biography, but I had nothing special upbringing. I mean, my mom and dad, I was loved and all that, but I remember trailer park, and I loved it. A part of the projects, and then my dad's in the military. We moved over military bases, and I never felt like I didn't have a lot, but looking back, and I really didn't know. And so it wasn't really though like until high school, and I recall I don't know what it was. I just again it goes back to me my faith, and it goes back to Jesus, and I remember reading in the Old Testament. If you guys have ever heard the story of Daniel in the lion's den. And that's the kind of it's in the Bible, but a lot of kids, that's something you hear, Bible school. But Daniel was much more than that. And this is actually still, I actually said it earlier. I said spirit of excellence because that's always stuck with me. So Daniel actually wasn't his name. I actually forgot his Hebrew name, but the Babylonians came and they took Israel hostage. And I'm going somewhere with this. They took him hostage. They took him over, and the military, they were in control. And he was a slave, and he was working for the king. And he made a vow to God. He said, all I'm going to do is eat like vegetables, eat bread. And he ended up they said they look at him and his appearance was much better than all the rest. He looked healthier. He was way smarter than all of his college educated, like top, what's the word I'm looking for consultants. And it said that Daniel had a spirit of excellence in everything that he did. And that's always stuck with me. I remember, and then all of a sudden I remember wanting to read a bunch of books. I ended up 2 years later, I got a scholarship I didn't know it was coming. I was making fun, like, who's this nerd? They're like, hey, this young man, he's read so many books, and I'm like, wow, who's this guy? And they're like, Josh Evans. I'm like, oh, okay. Everybody kind of laughed at me, but I go up there, and then working out with so discipline there, and really, it honestly came from God. But then I started finding it in other men and women. Like I started again reading, opened that up to me. Men like Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Starting reading about them, and like even George Washington and George Patton. I was really drawn to the military because early on in my life, that's where I thought I was going. And it just now it's so ingrained. I don't work out, for example. Again, that's an easy one to point to because it's now it's like a non-negotiable. It's not even, I don't even really per se enjoy it. It's like, it's just part of my life.
Yeah.
And in a weird way, because I've seen the fruit of living a bit of a disciplined life, it's not that I'm addicted to it, but like I see the results and the benefit. I actually enjoy doing hard things in a way, because I've seen, again, I'm not like special. I've just seen what it does for my family and my life. So I know that's not one person other than, I would say, God. I mean, for real. And then it just kept getting stronger with the more I read and learned about other great men and women.
That's awesome. Yeah, doing hard things, you hear it all the time, creates growth.
Yeah, yeah, it's good. It's
Yeah.
I would highly recommend. And I'm always careful. I've been on a couple podcasts, and I don't want to sit here and act like I'm all that. Like I definitely have moments of laziness. I have moments where I let myself down. I'm disappointed. But I think it comes down to hey, you gotta let yourself.
It's human. You gotta feel those feelings.
You're human, and you've got. But if you're consistent, most of the world's just not consistent. You don't have to wake up at 4 a.m. and do a cold plunge immediately. And people have all these. It comes down to just being consistent in like the core areas of your life. Be a good person. Be a good husband or wife, mom, dad. Be a good person overall. That really is a big part. And then I do believe you should take care of your body, discipline your body. It doesn't have to be just powerlifting. I mean, you can ruck or run or whatever it may be.
Simple walk.
Yeah, I think that's huge. A lot of people neglect that. I don't have time for that. Again, I don't agree with that. Even if you get 20 minutes a day, and I think if you can, I think you should try to read a little bit, just a little bit. You don't have to go crazy, but those 3 things that will serve you so well the rest of your life.
We all have the same time every day, 24 hours. So
that's right.
That's how you spend
it. For sure. It's just being intentional about it. I mean, we talked about it in the Integrity First episode. Just the moment you wake up, if you've set yourself, if you set a standard or a habit, that having the integrity to do it is key.
Absolutely.
So that's where it begins, is just that first thing in the morning, having integrity to stick to what you said you're going to do.
Absolutely.
So moving on, what are some corporate goals or personal goals you have that tie maybe to Armed Corps, just personal goals yourself? Yeah.
Just a couple, because obviously I can talk in specifics, but as far as like just a general maybe audience that's listening, I for one, Kelby actually personally is one of his main goals, what he does here, but is to focus on fostering and perpetuating a good culture. And not just a good culture, but like I generally want, there's a lot of good companies, and America needs a lot of good companies. Like there's too many bad companies that lack leadership, I should say. But I want a place that generally has a high level of not just, it's not, culture isn't beanbags and like carry-ins. I've said this, I've heard this, is like culture is mutual respect and accountability. Look at the Patriots, all our Super Bowls. I mean, no one ever said, man, the Patriots is a blast to work, but people would go there because the excellence was part of who they are. And I think as humans, we are most fulfilled when we're excellent at something. Like what's the most, it doesn't matter what industry it is. You hear, hey, that guy is one of the world's greatest, and you can fill in the blank. And because of their excellent what they do, you have already your respect for that person. You have no idea about that industry, but your respect for that person is already like out of this world, because we as humans are impressed by that, because we're drawn to that. So I want Armed Corps to continue to be one of the best cultures, and we've made a lot of strides, and I think we have a long to go, but I'm proud of where we're at. Frankly, I want to keep. I mean, we're at the end of the day, you can say what you want about a business, but a business it exists to make money. Like that's why. Like if you say otherwise, like that's not true. Like a business's main goal is to make money. If you're not making money, you're not a business, or you'll be out of business, one or the other. So I continue want to make as much cash as possible, for the standard of living for the people here, but also I say this, even if Tim didn't listen to this, Tim is one of the most generous and giving people. I know, if anything, it's funny because being in my operations, I help with profit and loss and projections, and I'm always like, okay, I feel like I'm pushing our giving, and he's like, let's give more. And I'm like, okay. Like, he is extremely generous in giving. And so I do know it's nice if you're going to have a company who makes a lot of money, it'd be nice to have people who are always giving back. So if I'm being honest, I want Armed Corps to make a lot of cash to be able to do those things and to take care of the people here. And I want to be known, I think we already have created a great name here in our, what we call, the VA calls the VISN. That's like a conglomeration of different VA hospitals. But in this area, I just want to be known as one of the construction groups of just excellence. I keep going back to that. I want us to be top notch in everything we do. And again, without getting specifics on this podcast, like we have internal goals to do that. So culture, excellence, and make a lot of money. So
for sure. Yeah. All right. So if asked about you, what would your coworkers say about you besides going to the gym all the time and very disciplined with that? And I know this is probably a hard question and people don't want to talk about themselves. So you've mentioned it, but what do you think the coworkers would say about you?
And that is naturally a hard question for a lot of people, but I would hope that they say that, I'm trustworthy, and that they know that I've got their back, that they one thing that I would hope that they say is that I don't shift the buck to them to make them do the difficult things. If anything, I've been getting guided by others saying I need to start letting some of those hard things go to other people because, it's hard to respect the leader who gets to do the fun stuff, but then hey, I need to do this really hard thing, difficult thing, go do it alone. So I hope that they said that, I have their back and that, honestly, that I had their best interest in mind. And I generally do believe that I would hope all would think that. And also that I think there's enough, I've said it enough publicly and privately that if it got to a point where someone think I wasn't adhering to any of those, that they have their freedom to come say that to me. So that's about 3 or 4 things I would.
Yeah, that's good. So what is something about ArmCorps that you would want listeners to know? Yeah. Maybe someone who doesn't know about ArmCorps, or if we spark some interest of them wanting to come work for us, or a client or a subcontractor. What is one thing you would say? You can say more than one too.
Yeah. I'd say one, I referenced it earlier, and I'm definitely not a brown noser or sycophant. Like I always tell my boys, like, you can't get too high, you can't get too low, because if compliments can get you too high, then that same person has the power to bring you low. So I say this because I genuinely mean it, not because I work for him. But for one, as far as owners go, Tim is genuinely one of the most generous and giving people I've met. I've had the privilege to work here, like I said, like 10 years, and I've seen subcontractors who, even on the field, and I won't say names on here, but I've seen examples of where an owner would show up and flaunt, his money, and they were all struggling or complaining, and they didn't have that respect. And Tim, there's been many times over, I've seen him not take paychecks during difficult times. I've seen him give more than we probably should as far as a business goes, because I say should in air quotes. I've seen him give to pretty much anyone who asks as far as donations and to the cancer clinic, and just, so I would say one, that Tim is genuinely one of the most giving people. So it's easy to come to work for someone like that. And you can trust that as an employee, you're going to have the best interest for you, from the very top. Yeah. I would say that, one thing maybe for our clients, because there's a lot of back contractors out there. And so another thing is I genuinely believe that there's a lot of care for our client. If anything, one thing that I had to learn early is I used to take almost everything personal, because I'm like, man, I'm working so hard. And this client would come back and just, I think they would treat me a way that I didn't think was fair. But I had to learn that, we're unique in that regard, because there's a lot of contractors who are going to try. Not again, I don't want to badmouth. There's some very good contractors out there, and some other great, excellent companies. But there's a lot that notoriously will try to cut corners or save on cost and cut quality. And so I always took it personal, but I had to realize that we're unique. We excel in that regard. So I think that we genuinely have our client's best interest at heart, and we want to do a good job from every individual level. And then finally, I said this morning, we had a meeting this morning. I've been at other companies, and there's many companies where, and not just companies, organizations, we'll just say it could be a high school group or whatever, especially high school, a lot of drama there. But I would say drama. Like, we have a pretty large group of people, relatively speaking. Yeah. And there's none of that here. Like, there's the occasional just workplace frustrations, but like everyone here genuinely seems to be our friends. Like, they cut up. Yeah. They respect one another. Like, and I'm not just saying that. Like, it's actually, I think we sometimes take it for granted how blessed we are in that regard. I've worked at places, man, it's so toxic. Yeah. And the people here they're just not like that. And again, start at the top. It's got to start there, because if you don't have it at the top level, then it's going to trickle down. Yeah.
All right. Well, just to kind of put a disclaimer in there, though, to save you make your job not as hard, Tim also gives services, and the ArmCorps gives services. Doesn't always have to be money, remember? Oh, right. You just gave it away.
I know. Yeah, my bad. We actually, even like when did that stop recording?
The camera did.
Okay. Back when we had some storms come through, little things like Tim immediately mobilized our guys and said, hey, go start helping houses that have been destroyed by this tornado, and don't charge them. As people were showing up like, how much do I owe you? And like, nothing. And we found out I don't want to say the only, because I can't say it for a fact, but we were one of the only people in the area. Again, that was led by Tim, and we were just using our resources to go help the community. So, and to give back in any way we can. So,
yeah, it's awesome. I agree. I mean, this was great. I don't know if you want to add anything or.
I hope I didn't ramble too much.
No, this was a good, fluent good episode. I
Awesome.
appreciate your time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got anything to add, Drew?
Oh no, I think I'm good. I'm just glad you're here and you've stuck with us even through the thick times, and we had to pivot a lot. So
Yeah,
it's cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thanks for having me, and it's a cool thing you guys are doing, and it's gonna be. I'm excited to actually hear some from other people.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, have a good day.
Before.